Minimal Chic Spring Summer 2026 must-have pieces and smart styling. Introduction. Welcome to Andara Fashion, where I always share my personal take on evolving style and how it connects with real-life dressing. In this video, I want to explore the idea of minimal chic for spring-summer 2026 and why it feels so relevant right now. I think this trend is not just about looking simple, but about making intentional choices that feel powerful. What I find interesting is how minimalism can actually feel more expressive than loud fashion when done right. So let's begin this journey into quiet confidence in style. Understanding minimal chic in 2026. When I look at minimal chic for spring-summer 2026, I see it as more than just clean outfits. I think it represents a mindset where less really becomes more, but only if each piece is carefully chosen. In my experience, people often misunderstand minimalism as boring, but I feel the opposite is true. What surprises me is how much personality can still come through even with very simple silhouettes. This is where I believe modern fashion is shifting in a very thoughtful direction. The new neutral color direction. Color plays a huge role in how minimal chic feels this season, and I personally see a stronger move towards softened neutrals. I think tones like warm beige, muted olive, and dusty white create a calm visual language. In my experience, these colors are more versatile than harsh black and white contrasts that many people still rely on. Unlike most people who think neutrals are safe, I actually find them to be the most expressive base for styling. Have you ever noticed how a simple tone can completely change your mood? Fabrics that define the season. For me, fabric choice is where minimal chic either succeeds or completely falls apart. I think breathable materials like linen blends and soft cotton knits define the feeling of spring-summer 2026. In my experience, when fabric moves naturally with the body, even the simplest outfit feels elevated. What I find interesting is how texture becomes more important than pattern in this aesthetic. It makes me realize that comfort and elegance can actually exist in the same space.
Я с тобой отужина, с тобой я, да будет ужина. Ты с тобой и тужина, и даже пижина. Ты, и знаю ты, я понимаю ты, меня знаю ты, я понимаю ты.
Silhouettes that speak quietly. Silhouettes this season are all about ease and structure working together, and I personally love that balance. I think slightly oversized shapes paired with clean tailoring create a very modern identity. In my experience, tight-fitting outfits are becoming less dominant because people want freedom in movement. What surprises me is how structured minimal pieces still manage to feel relaxed at the same time. This contradiction is what makes the style so visually interesting to me. Minimalism versus maximalism contrast. Unlike most people who assume fashion is either bold or boring, I see a clear dialogue between minimalism and maximalism. I think minimal chic wins in everyday life because it feels more wearable and less exhausting. In my experience, maximal outfits are beautiful, but often limited to specific moments. What I find interesting is how minimal fashion quietly adapts to almost any situation without trying too hard. Do you think simplicity can actually be more powerful than complexity? The essential tailored blazer. One piece I cannot ignore this season is the tailored blazer, which I think anchors the entire minimal chic aesthetic. In my experience, a well-fitted blazer instantly elevates even the simplest outfit underneath. I find it interesting how it can shift from casual to professional without losing identity. Unlike most people who only wear it formally, I personally style it in relaxed and unexpected ways. This versatility is exactly why I believe it remains a timeless essential. the soft slip dress evolution. The slip dress has evolved in a way that I think perfectly represents modern minimalism. In my experience, it is no longer just a nighttime piece, but something that works throughout the day. What I find interesting is how layering transforms its entire personality depending on styling choices. I personally love how it can feel both delicate and confident at the same time. Have you ever tried wearing a slip dress in a completely unexpected setting? Layering with intention. Layering in minimal chic is not about adding more, but about adding meaning, and I strongly believe this distinction matters. I think each layer should have a purpose rather than just filling space. In my experience, poorly layered outfits lose their clarity very quickly. What surprises me is how even one extra piece can completely change the visual balance. This makes me more intentional every time I build an outfit.
Я с тобой отдушина, с тобой я, ты будет душина. Ты с тобой и душина, и даже бежина. Baby, и знаю ты, baby, я понимаю ты. Baby, меня знает ты, я понимаю ты.
Accessories with quiet impact. Accessories in this style are subtle but never insignificant, at least in my opinion. I think small, structured bags and simple metal jewelry define the direction of 2026. In my experience, over-accessorizing ruins the calm energy of minimal outfits. What I find interesting is how one well-chosen detail can speak louder than multiple statement pieces. It really makes me rethink the idea of less effort means less impact. The surprising power of neutrals. What I find most surprising about this season is how neutrals are no longer background tones. I think they are becoming the main character in modern styling choices. In my experience, people underestimate how expressive beige or gray can actually be. Unlike what many believe, I feel neutrals carry emotional depth when styled correctly. This shift completely changed how I approach my own wardrobe choices.
с тобой отдушина, с тобой я, ты будет душина. Ты с тобой и душина, и даже беженя. Ты, и знает ты, я.
Footwear direction in Minimal Chic. Shoes this season lean toward simplicity with subtle structure, and I personally appreciate that shift. I think clean sandals, low-profile sneakers, and soft loafers define the everyday look. In my experience, heavy footwear often disrupts the balance of minimal outfits. What I find interesting is how comfort is finally being treated as part of aesthetics. It makes me feel like fashion is becoming more human-centered.
С тобой я, ты будет душина. Ты с тобой и душина, и даже беженя. И даже беженя.
Sustainability as a style mindset. For me, sustainability is deeply connected to minimal chic rather than being a separate idea. I think choosing fewer but better pieces naturally supports a more responsible wardrobe. In my experience, people become more attached to items they truly love and carefully select. What surprises me is how minimal styling often leads to less waste without forcing it. This makes the trend feel both stylish and meaningful at the same time. Common styling mistakes I notice. One mistake I often see is people confusing minimalism with ignoring detail completely. I think this leads to outfits that feel unfinished rather than intentional. In my experience, minimal style actually requires more attention, not less. What I find interesting is how small adjustments can completely change the outcome. This is why I always focus on proportion and balance first.
И даже беженя. Ты, и знает ты, я понимаю ты, меня знает ты, я понимаю ты.
A question about your style choices. At this point, I want to ask you directly, do you feel more confident in simple outfits or expressive ones? I think your answer says a lot about how you naturally connect with fashion. In my experience, most people shift between both depending on their mood. What I find interesting is how style often reflects emotional state more than trends. This is something I always remind myself when choosing what to wear. Cultural influence on minimal chic. I think global culture has played a big role in shaping minimal chic for 2026. In my experience, fashion is now influenced by multiple regions blending aesthetics together. What I find interesting is how Japanese and Scandinavian simplicity continue to inspire modern styling. Unlike older fashion cycles, I feel influence now feels more fluid and less defined. This creates a more open and personal interpretation of minimalism.
Я с тобой отдушина, с тобой я, ты будет душина. Ты с тобой и душина, и даже бежина. Ты, и знаю ты, я понимаю ты, меня знаю ты, я понимаю ты.
Styling for different body expressions. For me, minimal chic works beautifully across different body types when adjusted thoughtfully. I think proportion is more important than size when creating balanced looks. In my experience, confidence grows when clothing feels aligned with movement and comfort. What surprises me is how one silhouette can be interpreted in so many ways. This makes the style feel inclusive without needing strict rules. Day-to-night transformation. One thing I really enjoy is how minimal chic transitions easily from day to night. I think it only takes small adjustments like layering or changing footwear. In my experience, this flexibility makes minimal fashion extremely practical for real life. What I find interesting is how the same outfit can feel completely different depending on lighting and context. This adaptability is why I personally rely on this style so much. personal reflection on minimal chic. When I reflect on this trend, I realize it aligns closely with how I want to live more intentionally. I think fashion becomes more meaningful when it reflects clarity rather than chaos. In my experience, simplifying choices often reduces stress in daily dressing. What I find interesting is how minimalism feels like a quiet form of self-respect. It makes me appreciate fashion in a deeper way than before. Conclusion. As I conclude this discussion, I feel that minimal chic is not just a seasonal trend, but a long-term shift in how we approach style. I think it teaches us to value quality, intention, and emotional connection with clothing. In my experience, the simplest outfits often leave the strongest impression. What do you think? Can minimalism truly define the future of fashion, or is it just another cycle? If you enjoyed my perspective, I would love for you to subscribe to Endara Fashion and join me in the next conversation.